In this video, we are going to be talking about podcast metrics and what stats you need to know in order to gauge your podcast's performance. So your podcast is published and you've got a marketing plan to get the word out about your show. But how do you know if your marketing plan and tactics are actually working and whether or not they're actually connecting with your audience? That is where podcast stats come into play. Podcast stats can provide the following. Stats can give you insight into whether your content is performing well with your target audience. Stats can also show how effective your marketing tactics are. They can provide a guide for where your audience is. Stats can provide insight into what kind of content your audience actually wants to listen to. Before we get into all the different types of stats to measure your show against, let's define one of the most important terms in podcast stats: the download. It may seem a bit elementary, but up to until recently, there wasn't an agreement on what exactly constitutes a download when discussing podcasting. Fortunately, the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, has laid out standards that podcast hosting companies, advertisers, and podcasters can rely on when trying to accurately measure the performance of a podcast. According to the IAB, a download of a podcast consists of the following: a 1-minute minimum length of time that the podcast has been listened to. This means that if someone listens to your podcast and stops after 30 seconds, that isn't counted as a download. Advanced filtering is applied, which removes bots and other downloads that do not accurately represent a real person, listener, downloading an episode. Oftentimes, when a new episode is released, podcasts apps may employ bots that request the new episode. This can result in your stats being thrown off from what they actually represent. Now that we have an understanding of what a download actually means, let's take a look at the stats that we'll be discussing today. Daily downloads, measurement over day ranges, downloads by user agent/destination, geographic data, consumption data. In the Libsyn Dashboard, we can see a large graph that showcases our daily downloads. These are downloads that you receive on a daily basis. These downloads can show you how many specific episodes were downloaded within a given day, along with how many total listeners tuned in. When you notice a spike in daily downloads, it can be for a few different reasons. For one, the day a new episode releases will often show a spike from your listeners that already follow your show, as they are the first to be notified of the new episode. Secondly, a new listener who decided to follow your show and download your entire back catalog can cause a spike in downloads. It is important to mention that you should not obsess over your daily download numbers. Remember that podcasts are an on-demand medium, so podcasts that you release a while ago or in your back catalog could spike in the future. A better method to gauge growth is to measure trends over the long term. In the Libsyn Dashboard, we can see a large display of our past 5 episodes and accompanying date ranges from the time of their release. These stats can provide a clearer picture of performance by measuring the change in downloads over time. The first 7 days will give you a good idea on how many followers you may have, as again, those members of your audience are going to be the first to be notified that your new episode is available. This can also give you an idea on how well your marketing for the current episodes is working. The first 30 days after episode release is an overall benchmark for measuring the immediate interest of your new episode. Keep in mind that the average amount of downloads for new episodes can range between 125 to 140. The first 90 days can show long-term trends for your episodes. For instance, if there is a big difference in downloads between your 30 and 90-day total, it can mean that your episode topic spiked in interest. Thus, it surfaced in search. Or that reposting the episode is having the effect of giving the episode new life. Knowing how many downloads you have is one thing, but knowing where they're coming from can help you market your episodes in the future. For instance, if you could identify what podcast app the majority of your audience was using to listen to your episodes, then you could craft a strategy around what links to share when you released a new episode. This is where looking at downloads by destination and user agent become important. User agents are the specific coded names for applications that users are employing to download your podcast. Some user agents are obvious. Apple Core Media, Apple Podcasts, iTunes are all representative of downloads from within the Apple ecosystem. Some are not. For example, SP-agent means a download originating from a Samsung device. Destinations, as outlined in the Libsyn Dashboard, are the specific distribution channels that you set up within your media host. So what's the difference between a destination and a user agent? Well, a single destination can consist of multiple user agents. For example, the Libsyn Classic RSS feed represents your default RSS feed. If we dial into the specific destination, we can see that the destination has downloads from user agents consisting of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Chrome, Podcast Addict, and many others. Knowing where your downloads are originating from can extend beyond what podcast app is used. Geographic data can identify exactly where your audience is. Geographic data is great for identifying where your show is popular. If part of your marketing strategy includes live shows, conventions, or going on tour, this data can provide you with the regions or specific markets that are worth exploring when taking your podcasts on the road. One metric that is not provided by your hosting provider, but is equally important, is consumption data. This data measures just how long your listeners consume your episodes. It can tell you whether or not that 10-minute long banter between you and your co-host is effective at retaining your listeners through your 1-hour long episode. Podcast applications and directories will typically house this data on their own platforms. Generally, you want to aim for a consumption rate of at least 50%. If you find that the consumption rate dips at certain points within your show, listen back to those sections and try to identify what might be causing people to either skip or drop off from the podcast. It could be something as simple as a tangent that goes on way too long, or maybe a segment that just isn't interesting to the audience. So let's take a minute to review what we've learned. Stats allow podcasters to measure the performance of their episodes as well as the strength of their marketing tactics. Don't obsess over daily downloads. Instead, focus on long-term trends over the 7, 30, and 90-day ranges. User agents, destinations, and global data can help to identify where your audience not only downloads your podcast, but also where they physically originate, which can help with targeting for future marketing planning. Consumption data can clue you into what content within your episode is actually resonating with your audience. Stats can help you quantify your podcast's performance. But remember, stats are not the be-all and end-all. Your numbers may be lower or higher depending on your chosen niche. Remember, when you're getting started, focus on your content first and stats second.